All right, so periodic trends. These questions are from O levels. I will be referring to IGCSE questions as well. They're very similar, just a couple of things extra in IGCSE. All right, so which statement about the elements in periodic table is correct? Let's analyze this. So all the elements in same group have the same reactivity. So what exactly do we remember from the group? Group means same number of valence shells. So that means they should react in a similar way. They have same chemical properties. But the bigger the atom, the faster it loses electron and the more difficult or the slower it gains electron. So bigger atoms have a tendency to lose electrons better. They become more reactive in that. So bigger metals are good. Smaller non-metals are good when it comes to gaining electrons. All right. So all the elements in the same group, they have the same reaction, but they don't have the same reactivity. The ones that are bigger metals will react faster. The ones that are smaller non-metals will react faster. So this one is wrong. All the elements with 4 electrons in their outer shell are metals. 4 electrons in the outer shell, that's group 4. Group 4 starts at non-metals, carbon, silicon. Those carbon is non-metal, then silicon is non-metal, but it is metalloid. Then as you go down, you see more and more metals. I think lead is also in that group, which is a really good metal. So yeah, they are not all metals. An element in group 2 of the periodic table would form an ion with -2 charge. So group 2 means they have 2 electrons in the last shell, which means they will lose 2 electrons. So when they lose 2 electrons, that means they get +2 charge, not -2. Elements in the same period of the periodic table have the same number of shell. Yes, we know that period or the row in the periodic table tells us about the number of shells that they have. So this one is correct. Okay, what happens when a strip of silver, so you have silver metal, is immersed in an aqueous solution of copper 2 sulfate? So copper 2 means that copper ion is there, copper 2 ion with a +2 charge, and silver metal is there. Is silver more reactive or less reactive than copper? Is silver more reactive or less reactive? So for that, you have to memorize the reactivity series, and you'll notice that in there, silver is less reactive. So less reactive things will not form ions when more reactive things are there. So copper 2 will remain as ion because it is more reactive, and silver metal will be as it is. So B is correct. No reaction occurs. Which electronic configuration represents 3 metallic elements? So metallic elements, ability to lose electron is higher. In the same period matlab same number of shells. Okay? So we are looking for the same number of shells. So A has 3 shells, D has 3 shells, C has 2 shells. So A, C or D में से कोई हो सकता है. B नहीं हो सकता because B has different number of shells. अच्छा, they are metals. Metals का मतलब है कि उनके last shell में number of electrons is pretty low. So you have 2, 8, 7. 7 का मतलब है halogen है, ये तो non-metal है, ये नहीं हो सकता. C को देख लेते हैं. You have 2 shells, 2, 2 metal है, 2, 3 metal. हो सकता है metalloid है, वैसे तो boron है. 2, 4 carbon है, non-metal है, clearly हमें पता है. D देखते हैं. 2, 8, 1, 3 shells, 1 in the last shell. It is group 1 metal. 2, 8, 2 last shell में 2 है, metal है. 2, 8, 3 aluminium last shell में 3 है, metal है. They will try to lose them. By the way, you have studied bonding. Based on this configuration, can you tell me which one will have the highest melting point? In D. किसका सबसे ज़्यादा melting point होगा? Okay, so the answer is element 3. It has the highest melting point. The reason, it has the strongest metallic bonding. So why does it have the strongest metallic bonding? Remember, metallic bonding comes from delocalized electrons and cations. So aluminium, the one in the last one, 283, will lose 3 electrons. Every atom in there. The second one will lose 2 electrons, and the first one will lose 1 electron for the sea of electrons. So इसका मतलब है कि ज़्यादा electrons lose करने से ज़्यादा stronger metallic bonding will be formed. So that is the answer. The third one. So it has the stronger metallic bonding in all of them. So highest melting point as well. Okay, fourth, an element in period 3 and group 7. 3 and group 7. ठीक है. Which statement is correct? So period 3 का मतलब है third row, and group 7 मतलब halogen. So look in group 7, third row, you have chlorine there. The element will form one positive. One positive means it loses electron, but we know that to gain electrons, it will become noble gas. So it will gain one more electron, so it becomes one negative. So that is the preferred chart that it has. The element will have 3 electrons in the last shell. We know it's in group 7, so 7 in the last shell. The element will have 7 in the last shell. Yeah, that one is correct. The element will have 7 shells. No, it will have 3 shells. Q period 3. The table contains information about the physical properties of elements. Elements hai, melting point hai, boiling point hai. By the way, can you guys tell me what kind of bonding there is? Chlorine mein kaun si bonding hai? Chlorine element, what kind of bonding does it have? You need to relate this chapter to the previous chapter. Saat syllabus revise karenge hum, so that you don't forget. So chlorine, what kind of bonding does it have? It is covalent bonding. It is a diatomic thing, which means it forms Cl2 molecule. Okay? So diatomic, covalent, and it has weak intermolecular forces in it, which is why the melting point is low. Some facts that you need to remember. Okay, boiling point kaisa hoga iska? Is it gas at room temperature? Yes. So the boiling point should be less than room temperature. A, B, and C ho sakte hain, D nahi ho sakta. Why? Because D is much higher than room temperature. अगर डी होता तो ये चीज रूम टेम्परेचर पे लिक्विड होती, वो ये है नहीं. ओके, copper does have more valence electrons that it gives to the metallic lattice. So copper has a greater or stronger metallic bonding than iron. So copper का melting point iron से ज्यादा होना चाहिए. तो iron का 1539 है, तो इसका ज्यादा होगा. ओके, so it should be C लग रहा है अभी तक तो, लेकिन C हो नहीं सकता, तो आगे देखते हैं. तो that clearly shows कि इसमें 2887 हो नहीं सकता. So let's move forward. Boiling point of iron. Boiling point of iron is higher than 1539. So the only option that's left is B. Okay, so that would work because copper might lose. Copper will lose 1 electron to the lattice first. Copper plus 1 ions, they form red solutions. So it is B. Iron will lose 2, copper will lose 1. So that's why iron has a high melting point. Okay, the diagram shows the outline of part of the periodic table. Which statements are correct? Element W, X, and Y form colored compounds. Colored compounds किन के होते थे? Transition metals के. The ones in the middle over here, from here to here. So X and Y are the transition metals. They will form colored compounds. W will not. By the way, W, X, and Y are metals. Okay, X, Y, and Z have high melting points. Z is bromine. I know that because it's in group 7, and the group 7 goes fluorine, chlorine, bromine. Fluorine and chlorine are gases, and bromine is liquid at room temperature. There are only 2 elements in the periodic table that are liquid at room temperature: bromine and mercury. Okay, so X, Y, and Z have high melting point. High doesn't make sense because Z is a liquid at room temperature. So uska to melting point bahut kam hai. Element X and Y act as catalysts. We know that because they are transition metals, so they do act as catalysts. They have variable oxidation states and they form colored compounds. So we know that. So it's only 3 is right. The diagram shows structure of which element in period 3. So it is in period 3, so it can't be carbon, right? But the structure looks very similar to what carbon does. Every atom is attached to 4 others, so it must be silicon. Okay, so it must be tetrahedral structure. Every carbon is attached to 4 others, must be silicon. The diagram shows an outline of part of the periodic table. Okay, the melting point of W is lower than that of Z. Dekhte. W is solid at room temperature, even if it has a low melting point, because it's in group 1, they have low melting points, but hote to solids hi hain. We are not talking about the francium and all that. This will be solid. So Z is chlorine, which is gaseous. So A is wrong. W and Z react together to form compound WZ. अब यहाँ पे क्या बात हो रही है? W is metal, Z is non-metal. W loses 1, Z gains 1. So they both have positive 1 and negative 1 charge. Okay, and that means that they will react in 1-to-1 ratio. Because charges की ratio 1-to-1 है. So this is correct. They will form a compound WZ. They will have ionic bonding. W will lose 1 electron and Z will gain 1 electron. for every atom that they have. X could form an oxide X2O3. X is a transition metal, but its charge we don't know, so we can't say that. Y forms an oxide YO2. Y is in group 4, so Y could be correct. Yeah, Y could be correct because Y could be carbon or silicon, and silicon is silicon dioxide. And X is also correct, the C situation, because X could form an oxide. Yeah, the possibility is still there. It's a post-transition metal, so you can sakta hai. So that means A is the answer because A is wrong. In the periodic table, how many periods are needed to accommodate all the elements in number 1 to 18? So just look at the 18th one, that is argon. So argon is in third period, so we know that we need 3. Okay. An atom of which element has the same configuration as strontium ion? ये हमने periodic table पे देखा था. Strontium ion is positive 2. It's in group 2. So from the periodic table, move 2 steps back. Because it's positive 2, that means 2 steps back. If it was negative, you move that many steps forward. So 2 negative हो तो आप 2 steps forward चले जाओ और आपको वो element मिल जाएगा जिसकी configuration वो होगी. और 2 steps back चले जाएं तो you will get positive 2 का charge क्या होगा. So that is going to be krypton, I think. So that is our answer. All right, so that's 10 questions from this worksheet. We'll solve the rest. I'll give those to you in homework. Let's start with group properties. So group properties, you need to remember group 1, group 7. In दोनों की properties आपको याद होनी चाहिए. All right, which element is sodium? So sodium has low melting point. Sodium conducts electricity, and sodium has lesser density than water. Water की density होती है 1. So sodium we know floats on water. So this must be, there's only one that has lesser density and low melting point, D. A non-metal element forms oxides of type XO2 and XO3. Non-metal है, तो उसका मतलब ये हुआ कि non-metals में से हमने pick करना है. It cannot be transition metal. अगर metal होता तो transition metal होता, because 2 different charges. But this is non-metal, so A is a metal, can't be. D is carbon. Carbon forms carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide. CO and CO2. C is hydrogen. It forms H2O and H2O2. So this is not right. And sulfur forms SO2 and SO3, which are both acidic gases. So yeah, this is it. Which property would all the hydrogen compounds of group 7 elements have? So group 7 with hydrogen. So group 7 is non-metal. Hydrogen is non-metal. They form covalent compounds. So yeah, A is right. B, solids, no, not necessarily. Form alkaline aqueous solution. We will talk about it in detail when we talk about acids and bases. So they form acids when they react with H, and conduct electricity when molten will be wrong because covalent compounds do not give ions when they get molten. All right, what suggests that metal M is not in group 1? Okay, so metals की क्या properties होती हैं? Group 1 में खास तौर पे they're soft metals. So they have low density, they float on water. When they react, they make alkaline solution. They are easy to cut. They have silvery appearance, shiny appearance. They are good conductors of electricity, which is for most metals, it's true. But for group 1 in particular, they're soft, they are easy to cut, they form alkaline solution with water. And let's see. M has a bright silvery appearance. Yes, group 1 is metal, they will do that. Good conductor of electricity. Yeah, they have metallic bonding, so true. M is hard and difficult to cut. Cannot be group 1. And most likely not a metal, because difficult to cut का मतलब है कि वो hard है. Or hard उन्होंने बोला हुआ है, so that could be group 7, I don't know, group 4, group 5, वहाँ से कुछ हो सकता है. M produces alkaline solution when it reacts with water. That is true. M does produce alkaline solution. M produces hydrogen gas when it reacts. Yeah, that is true, because group 1 metals, when they react with water, they displace the H positive in water. Okay. Which statement explains why the chemical properties of sodium and potassium are similar? So they are in the same group, right? They have the same valence electrons. So that is why their chemical properties are the same. So yeah, this is A. They are in the same group. They have the same number of valence electrons. Okay. All right. By the way, in questions like this, we can see that there are true statements. Like we know, yeah. So you can see that there are some statements that are correct. For example, they are soft and can be cut. Yeah, that is true for sodium and potassium. But that does not explain why their chemical properties are the same. They have similar melting points. They do have similar melting points. Potassium melts at lower temperature than sodium, but still it doesn't explain why that is. They have similar properties. These are similar properties, but the reason they have that is because they have the same number of valence electrons. They're in the same group. Okay, so that's the reason. All right, a gas G has no smell, not poisonous. What poisonous gases do we know of? Acidic gases like sulfur dioxide, sulfur trioxide. Uh, we also know of neutral gases like carbon monoxide, that is poisonous, H2O2, that is poisonous. Then reacts with hydrogen at high temperature and pressure. What reacts with hydrogen at high pressure? This is something that we'll study later on. This is nitrogen. Okay, so C. Which change in the properties of halogens is not correct. So halogens are group 7. As you go down the group, the color gets darker. There is a higher melting point that they have. They get higher densities as you go down. They get less and less reactive as you go down. So that's all there. So what's true in this case? So chlorine, bromine to iodine, darker in color. Yeah, that is true. Decrease in melting point. That is wrong. There's an increase in melting point. Decrease in rate of diffusion. Obviously, the atom becomes bigger and the MR becomes higher, so they cannot diffuse that easily. An increase in density. Yeah, that is true because chlorine is gas, bromine is liquid, and iodine is solid. A metal X forms oxides with formula XO and X2O3. This is a metal and it's clearly a transition metal because it has two different valencies. XO means it has positive 2 because oxygen is negative 2, so it cancels this out. And X2O3, using the cross multiplication or flip rule, we can say that this is positive 3. All right, where is X in the periodic table? Transition metal, multiple states. Sorry about my dog. She really wants to go out and I'm not letting her. Which pair of metals are not oxidized when added to water? So that simply means that which will not react with water. So calcium is more reactive than H positive, so it will react. Copper is less reactive, so it will not react. Potassium is more reactive, it will react. In fact, the reaction will be quite explosive, fast, vigorous, and you will get fumes of hydrogen gas. Potassium will float on water, moving around, darting across the surface. So this could even catch fire. And silver is less reactive than water, so it won't do anything. So silver and copper. In fact, silver, copper, gold, and platinum, they are called noble metals. The reason that they don't get, they don't react with water. So you can let them stay in damp condition and they won't tarnish or anything. So that is why they're noble metals. And you can guess that they have been valued historically by people. Just for this thing. All right, so that is this worksheet. Let's do this one. This is focusing on transition metals. All right, which process does not involve the use of catalyst? This is something that I talked to you yesterday about. That the extraction of iron, that wasn't a part of it. The manufacture of sulfur trioxide uses vanadium 5 oxide, V2O5, so that is involving transition metals. The production of ammonia, it is Haber process. Yeah, so it does require iron catalyst. And then redox reaction for car exhaust. We use catalytic converters in car. They use 3 different metallic catalysts: rhodium, platinum, palladium. So yeah, A is the answer. A in fact uses carbon. We'll talk about carbon soon. Okay, the table gives the melting points, densities, and electrical conductivities of 4 different elements, which is copper. So copper, we know, copper is high melting point. So it can't be A, B, or C. There you go. But just to confirm, copper has high density. Yes. Copper is a good conductor. In fact, it's an excellent. Okay. Contact process produces sulfur trioxide. Haber process produces ammonia. Hydrogenation produces margarine. Contact process is the only one that uses a compound in this. V2O5 is the compound. But Haber process uses iron and hydrogenation uses nickel. So that is something that you need to remember, that there are two elements and the first one is compound. So it is B. Which element described in the table is a transition metal? So they must have multiple oxidation states. So A cannot be true. They must have colored compounds. So yes, C or D could be the answer. They have high melting. C is definitely the answer. What happens when a strip of silver is immersed? We have already talked about it. Silver is less reactive than copper, so it will not replace it. No displacement reaction happens. Okay, so which element has a variable oxidation state, can act as a catalyst, forms colored compounds? These are all properties of transition metals. So out of these, B is the transition metal. Now you might ask me, why lead? Why not lead? So lead is what we call a post-transition metal. We are only focusing on the transition metals for now. If you go to ptable.com, you can also highlight the transition metals. Which pair of properties are both correct for a typical transition metals? Okay. They form colored compounds. They have variable oxidation states. They have high melting point. They act as catalysts. So whichever of these matches the two properties, that's the answer. So I think that is B. The table gives the formula of catalyst and used in some industrial process, as you can see over here. So in fact, I would suggest that you memorize most of these. For polymerization, you don't need to know this. You don't need to memorize this. Same for cracking, you don't need to memorize this. You just need to remember that you have Haber process and contact process, and that's the one you're required to use. How many different transition metals are included? So you can see that iron is a transition metal, molybdenum, vanadium, aluminum is not, copper is, so titanium is. So you can see from here, whichever they are, just count. What is the purpose of vanadium 5 oxide in the contact process? So vanadium 5 oxide acts as a catalyst, which means it speeds up the chemical process. Which chemical process? Sulfur dioxide converting to sulfur trioxide. So that process. Okay. The oxides of an element X increases the rate of decomposition of hydrogen per oxide. So element X must be transition metal because it's increasing the rate, it's acting as a catalyst, must be transition metal. At the end of the reaction, the oxide is unchanged, so definitely a catalyst. Which of these are correct? So you just look in the periodic table. Wherever you see a catalyst, that's the one. So I think it is C, because D, I think I remember, is lead, which is not a transition metal as such. So C is, I think, a transition metal. 20 is calcium, 18 is argon. So you can just look it up in the periodic table. Okay. So these are some properties of these compounds, and these are some different kind of questions that you get in the periodic table chapter. So today we have just done the MCQs, and once we start the problem solving session, once we are done with the syllabus, we will go through some of these theory questions as well. So that's it for today. Take care.